Good afternoon. My name is Kinnee and I have the honor of serving as the Vice President for Business Development and Operations for the Oklahoma Manufacturing Alliance. The Manufacturing Alliance is one of 51 MEP centers across the U.S. and Puerto Rico, serving as a support organization for manufacturers across our state. Just as a moment of podium privilege, I just want to kind of give everybody a little bit of an overview on the state of manufacturing right now. Just for the sake of context, and not as if I think everyone's been under a rock for the past 6 or 7 months, I thought it might be helpful to see where manufacturing has been and where we're going. There are, as many see it, 3 phases of the pandemic: respond, recover, and thrive. There are many companies who are firmly settled in the last 2 phases, thankfully at this point, and hope to find themselves fully in the thrive stage through looking at some of the following opportunities. Obviously, supply chain, that's a big one right now, front and center on every manufacturer's mind and how that's going to work. The value chains or supply chains pre-COVID were set up for maximizing operating efficiencies. COVID, fortunately or unfortunately, revealed the pitfalls associated with this and pointed out the downfall of having production grossly impacted by the lack of ability to find a single part. If you can't source that one part, you can't make the whole item, you're in trouble. Now, companies are going to be looking at the comparison of margins versus resiliency against the, and how they have to address the need to strengthen supply chains against the demand of owners and shareholders. Flexibilities in the supply chain is going to become the norm in this effort, with more emphasis on understanding customer demand through data. Data is going to be a big topic throughout all of our panels today. COVID also brought to light the need to diversify supply and production to create greater resiliency and to look at the viability of onshoring or nearshoring to bring back or to expand manufacturing in the U.S. So we move into the recover phase. Some industrial organizations ramped up production, while others, like automotive, were set to restart their production altogether. Priority during this phase was to make employees feel safe, obviously, and protected from the risk of virus spread, requiring physical distancing, spreads across factory floors, and production and warehouse environments. Solutions to these things typically included crew scheduling, balancing, deploying adequate PPE, and developing PPE standard operating procedures. The second half of 2020 is where industrial companies are expected to launch their recover and thrive. And we're really hoping thrive is the big one. More importantly, these thrive strategies in the wake of the pandemic are to emerge stronger and prepare for what the next normal is. I don't really like the saying new normal because it may be new, but to me, it's definitely not normal. New short cycle revenue streams focused on digital and aftermarket services are hoping to offset the pressures of some declining equipment sales. Finally, a focus on the ever-changing dimensions of work, the workplace, and workforce may be the most immediate need. Include building trust with your on-site workforce and finding ways through things like Zoom to support your virtual workers. A focus on new technology and data analytics is going to be paramount to the growth and success of manufacturing companies. The UAS industry is primed to be a major player in this space, with a focus on all areas from agriculture to first response. Today, we have 2 great companies represented here to tie together manufacturing and the UAS industry. Gentlemen, I'd like to start by having you introduce yourselves and just talk for a few minutes each, if you would, about your organization. And Nick, I'm going to start with you. Nick Onelio, please, with phase 1, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your organization and where you're headed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kinnee, for the introduction. Again, my name is Nick Onelio. I am the Aerial SUAS Manager here at Phase 1 Industrial. Getting into our IXM line of cameras, we do everything from the man side, from our aerial systems, complete systems, and then on our commercial side, we have all of our IX Plan, IX Flight, and software side. We are well known for a camera manufacturer. We're headquartered in Denmark, in Copenhagen, with offices here in the US, in Denver and New York. Then we have Hong Kong, and then we have research and development centers in Tel Aviv and Tokyo. But again, this is my contact information, Phase 1 Industrial, getting into our camera. Again, we make a IXM metric camera. A metric brings value as far as you're getting high resolution, you're getting more safety distance from structures, whether that's inspection applications, you're getting a larger footprint for mapping applications, you're getting less imagery for data processing on the back end of that. You're going to get shorter flight times for flight crews depending on what type of manufacturer, speaking of that, the aerial platform itself, and then a wider dynamic range. And what I mean by that, you're going to get light in those shaded areas on the data processing side. Benefits of our cameras, again, if you take a look at the screen here, going from a Phantom 4 RTK, which most of you are probably familiar with today, all the way up to a Sony A7R, the 35 millimeter full frame DSLR cameras, our medium format, and even up to our IXM RS150. We're just giving you a greater efficiency. A couple highlights here. Again, a wider dynamic range, what I talked about earlier, ability in post-processing to make adjustments and highlights in those shadowed areas. And then to conclude, be glad to answer any questions at the end of this. Kinnee, the UAS Tech Forum, everybody, thank you for allowing Brett and I to speak.
Nick, thank you for being here. We're excited to hear more from you as we go throughout this panel today. Brett Kanda with FLIR. Love to hear about your organization as well.
Yeah, thanks, Kinnee. And I think that throughout this panel, we should try and keep being able to adapt and stay flexible in the post-COVID world or mid-COVID world. And that's not only from a manufacturing perspective. Clearly, I'm in my car, and we all are working from home these days with children. And so I did have a deck planned. However, we'll keep with the theme of being flexible and adaptable. So I'm still here, but my name is Brett Kanda. I'm the UAS Business Development Manager at FLIR. I'm responsible for our global sales, policy, and software partnerships for the industrial technology segment at FLIR. So FLIR is the world's leading thermal imaging company. We have two business segments, the government technology segment and the industrial technology segment. For the purposes of this panel, we will be discussing the technology and payloads that we've created for the industrial segment. We've been in this market for approximately 5 or 6 years at this point. We have built numerous payloads. And for anyone not familiar with thermal imaging, essentially our cameras are sensing infrared radiation through non-contact techniques. So we are able to see differences in temperature values amongst everything in our environment. So that allows us to see at night. It allows us to see through smoke and fog, and it allows us to extract temperature values out of every pixel in the image. So we've been the industry leader since 1978, and we have been the pioneers in thermal imaging across multiple sectors. And so I'm excited to talk about how our business has changed in this new environment, specifically our drone business, but we have created solutions around COVID and elevated skin temperature screening, which I think are applicable for this conversation as well. So excited to be here and looking forward to getting into it.
Thank you, Brett. Definitely interesting what you guys are doing as a reaction to COVID. And I see a lot of companies pivoting, and it's been some silver linings in all of this. Brett, I'm going to stick with you if you would. I've gotten a lot of questions about the UAS industry as a whole across the United States. And with our new economy and the changes we see, those silver linings that do come out, and we see certain industries being impacted in a positive way. Where do you see your industry having the most impact on what I'm going to call the new economy?
So I think that robotics as a whole, and specifically UAS, have the value propositions that us within the industry are well aware of. However, I think that as social distancing, efficiency, being able to be more lean and efficient in operations, we are really seeing the value of drone technology come to the surface because of everything that's happened. Now, I'm sure I speak for Nick as well, and everybody in the drone industry. We're believers that this was going to happen at some point, but never in a million years did we think that a global pandemic would be the reason that, companies across multiple industries, whether that be agriculture or oil and gas or industrial inspection or public safety, everybody is having to relook at their business model, their budgets. And at the end of the day, drone technology is faster, it's more efficient, and you get better data, and you really get actionable insights into your assets. And so we are seeing, definitely a slowdown in business because of COVID, and that's natural. But I think that the acceleration of the industry after this into 2021 is going to be what all of us in the industry knew was coming, just a little bit quicker than expected. And so when it comes to manufacturing and keeping up with technology, I think that this is only going to accelerate our product development, our innovation, our ability to support growth of the industry. And so I think that we in the drone industry are in a very good place moving forward. And I think that the marketplace is becoming a little bit more competitive. Obviously, DJI has had the lion's share of the market over the past 8 to 10 years. And, you know, in any healthy, you know, economy or microeconomy like the drone industry, competition is a good thing. And so we're starting to see more of that, which is going to cause innovation as a byproduct. So better products for the end users, more streamlined workflows. And at the end of the day, you're going to have better insights into whatever asset you own. So it's a very exciting time for sure.
Truly is. And I think we do have a lot of companies that are utilizing this time, as I have seen in past recessions, to kind of pull back and do more R&D, look at, you know, doing more with less. And so the value, I agree that value of the drone industry, I see is increasing through this time. Nick, from your take, where do you see your industry having the most impact, specifically to the products that your company makes?
Yeah, and again, great question. I think for us, what we've seen, you know, since March is people going out there and looking for ways to be more creative, be more, I mean, to Brett's point earlier, adaptive. I think, you know, we get out here and they're open to new workflows. They're open to new processes within what they currently have. Anything that's going to make that quicker, going to make that better on the backside is what we can help provide these, you know, certain companies, whether that's alignment out, inspecting utility assets, whether that's cell tower inspections in the telecom space, whether that's aerial mapping. We've seen even current customers of ours look into the UAV industry. They've been, you know, so traditional and old school, may I say, that, you know, aerial mapping on these large area types, you know, of projects. And now they're open to operating a drone, and it's more efficient and it's easier and it's more productive for their guys. And as far as an onboarding for their teams is something they see that's more efficient. And now they're providing their tool bag is expanding for their offerings. And so to Brett's point, I think he hit on it real well for this question, is that during a time like we've been through, everyone, these past 6 months, people are going to still be inspecting these assets no matter what. And we've seen it out in California and how valuable that this information can be seen delivering through our imagery, whether that's a phase 1 sensor, whether that's a FLIR sensor. And now to Brett's point, I mean, with the DJI running the field, being the MVP for the past 8 to 10 years, now we have US type manufacturers that, I mean, even ourselves here at phase 1, we're wanting to go to be integrated with, because now when people want to go elsewhere, to have alternative to a DJI platform, we can do that.
With some outstanding things that are really truly happening in the industry. Throughout all of this, what challenges have really risen, whether it's through changes in the industry, the economy, the pandemic? What are challenges that you see for our manufacturers in the drone industry right now?
Is that towards me, Kinnee?
Yeah.
Or, sure. So the last 6 to 9 months have seen a lot of challenges across the board at FLIR. We've had to overcome supply chain challenges, delivery of product to customers that are using them for life-saving purposes. So we've been challenged in a number of different areas, but I'd say that that's number one. I think that moving forward, the biggest challenge that we as an industry are going to have is likely regulation. But I think that because drone technology has emerged as such an important and vital technology, that will help put some pressure on lawmakers to really get things moving within the FAA when it comes to remote ID. And the build out of a UTM system, you know, BVLOS operations, operations over people, all of the things that need to happen for, you know, people to inspect assets in Class B airspace or do package delivery or, you know, and sticking with package delivery, I think that the challenge of delivering vital goods, resources, and food to people in a time like this, I never thought package delivery would emerge this quickly, but it clearly is, as we all saw the Amazon news and getting their Part 135 certification, which is a huge milestone in their development. And so, you know, overcoming the supply chain issues, but then overcoming the you know, all the regulatory hurdles that we face are going to be the two biggest barriers of entry into the drone industry as we continue to scale.
Nick, just a quick question for you, kind of following up on supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talk right now, and I'm seeing legislation being pushed both federally and locally here in Oklahoma to encourage backshoring, onshoring, nearshoring, whatever your term may be for it. Do you see that as a possible route for helping companies to continue to grow by pushing that type of legislation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially onshore here in America. I know for us, like, for example, when we have cameras, for example, we have a customer needing to send back a camera. And for us, our mainstay, we have two different types of locations in Tel Aviv and outside of Tokyo. And so for us to, you know, that's downtime for customers. And for us to have a onshore type premise location for that, which what we're hoping for here in the next 2 to 3 years as a company, is something we can go to, because downtime for customers means no revenue. Everybody knows that. And so that's, you know, to answer that question that you asked, Brett, it's been a breakthrough for us, because one, we're getting to rush up to that C-level type management within our organization and really have a fight for that. And I think locally here in Colorado, with what we're doing, we have a good backing with Colorado UAS and our meetup groups that we have, and doing everything virtual now, and getting a fight for that. Because for us, we have key customers like Brett does, to where they need our imagery, and when they don't get that and they have to sit down for 10 to 14 days for turnaround times, if they don't have a premium type warranty with us, then that hurts them, and that hurts their end users.
Absolutely, it does. Couldn't agree more on that. Both Nick and Brett, and I'll start, Nick, with you. If you would, and it's been addressed just kind of summarily on the top, the UTM, the unmanned traffic management, the importance of that, NASA's part in that. I'd love for you guys to elaborate on that, because I know that is that's vital, absolutely vital to the industry. So, Nick, let me start with you, and then we'll click over to Brett after that and let him address it as well.
I won't take Brett's terminology with what we took last week, but basically there's highways and city streets in the air. And I'll let Brett go into his terminology and break it down for everyone. But I think with the UTM thing, that is, you know, we look at the deliveries now. My dad was retired from Walmart, and there was a news that broke today with Flytrex that they signed a partnership with Walmart. And so explaining to my dad what all that means, and, you know, and you look at these, you know, suburban rural areas is where it's going to happen first. And I don't know if Brett can speak for him, but when I go out and fly a sample imagery data set out here outside of Colorado, I have people coming up to me wondering what the heck is going on, what am I doing, who am I with? So just laying down the law and what all entitles a drone operation from a Part 107, requesting airspace authorization. There's a lot of things that go into that, with many different applications that are out there today for folks listening in, with the drone deploys of the world, the Kitty Hawks of the world. There's many resources for that to have an understanding. But to Brett's point, I mean, it's a highway with, you can call it everybody going Mach 1 up there. And so there's going to be traffic lights, and everybody's going to have to read and obey laws of when I can and cannot go, speaking with ATCs throughout the country. So Brett, I'll let you take that one home, because like me and Amanda talked last week, this is, you made a great scenario.
Sure. And for some context, before I started working at FLIR, I spent 2.5 years working for the FAA and the Nevada test site, which is where all of the federal UTM testing took place. So, NASA has been working on the back end of a traffic management system for a very long time. NASA Ames specifically. And so the easiest way to think about UTM is taking our traffic light, stoplight infrastructure and putting it in the air to make sure that aircraft are not colliding with each other, to make sure that operations can happen in condensed areas like a New York City or a Los Angeles or any major metropolitan city, to ensure that there are sensors on the ground, sensors on the aircraft that make sure the aircraft does not collide with anything, including other aircraft, both unmanned and manned. And so to do this, the FAA has taken a few steps already. The Lance system is part of an overall UTM architecture. And with the Lance system allowing you to get automated airspace approval, that is a huge step. Now, the FAA is working on finalizing a law around remote ID, which is essentially a digital license plate for your drone that allows public safety and law enforcement agencies to track and make sure that drone operators are operating in compliance and in a safe way, and being able to ultimately move bad actors and nefarious operators out of harm's way to make sure people stay safe. And so UTM is really the key to scaling the drone industry, because until enforcement agencies have situational awareness of every drone that is in the sky, it's going to be tough to scale, as well as flying in condensed urban areas where the majority of assets lay, unless you're a large scale solar panel or remote telecommunications or energy. A lot of assets that need to be inspected happen in cities. And so the UTM will be the enabler to be able to fly in those types of areas, collect data, and do all of the things that we know drones can do. But this is a long-term project with a lot of development cycles, but the biggest step right now is getting a remote ID law into place that has the right language and takes everything into consideration that the drone industry has been throwing at the FAA over the past 9 months or so during the open comment period. So it's a combination of technology, policy, testing, validation, R&D. It's a robust effort that takes a lot of stakeholders, but it's definitely moving forward, and the FAA is collaborating at an international scale to help with standardization. And yes, it's taken longer than we all had hoped, but it's a big task and it's a big project. So it is moving forward, but I think that once we have more robust infrastructure as it relates to 5G, because a lot of the remote ID law is based around internet connectivity. So 5G will help enable UTM to scale and to ultimately be efficient and operable.
And understanding that there are parts of the country that struggle with having lack of broadband, and I can see where that would be a big concern. And
yeah.
We're asking our friends at the FAA and NASA to take on a huge task that I would say the general public really doesn't have a clear understanding of. How monumental. That's a big
right. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that we will continue to see development and tangible products that the FAA puts out moving forward that helps us all get to that point of being able to fly over people and scale flight operations from 1 mile operations to 5 to 10 to 15, and then get closer into where there's dense population. So it will happen, just it's going to take time.
But it is a big task, and this is something kind of tying into that. There will be a lot of innovation that comes out of this that is going to be massive opportunity for our high-tech manufacturers. There's a couple of points here, but first of all, I would ask you, how would you direct our high-tech manufacturers, and I'll start with you, Brett, and then segue to Nick. How would you direct our high-tech manufacturers to begin to take advantage of this new technology coming in?
That's a good question coming from a high-tech manufacturer. We use drone technology internally for a lot of different use cases, but I think that every industry that we know of is going to turn into a technology company in some way, shape, or form, whether that be a internal cloud network or an automated sensor array for whatever the use case may be. And so as high tech companies and large industrial companies become more advanced, deploy robust technology infrastructures to help make everything more efficient, that's going to be the key, because we're at an age where, you know, a lot of workers working from our phones and our laptops is pretty much second nature. And we're seeing that as workers are moved off site, you need to have a really good and reliable cloud infrastructure. And part of that cloud infrastructure is going to be the streams of data coming from your drones. So whether you're doing a security mission or an inspection mission, at the end of the day, all of that imagery, all of that video is going to be streaming into an operations center where you're making good decisions from. And so again, I don't think that this applies to just high-tech manufacturing companies. I think it applies to almost all companies at this point of understanding how to operate efficiently with the help of drone technology and remote sensing, really. Because what's most important about our industry is the sensor and the camera and the analytics that are coming out of it. That's where you really glean the value. And you have a technology like Phase One, you know, that has, you know, probably the highest megapixel count in the industry. You're going to see levels of data and things that you never noticed before. And a great example is energy. As solar is starting to scale into hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, inspecting these large-scale solar arrays traditionally takes a lot of time. And with drone technology, you can now deploy a drone and cover 200-300 acres in a day and have insights by that night to what cells are down, if you have a string down, if you have shading, if you have soiling, you know, all of these different things that you're now going to be able to understand in real time is just going to be the norm as time goes on.
Absolutely. I think there's so much R&D that's going to be done over the next few years, which, as you said, it's going to impact across multiple industries, and it will come from the data collecting and the incredible growth that's going to be in all sectors of the drone industry. So this is exciting, really exciting for manufacturing, I can tell you that. Nick, just kind of your take on how our high-tech manufacturers are going to be able to take advantage of technology.
Yeah, I'm kind of speaking near term here in the past 90 days, and to Brett's point, I mean, you go on to AI. I think for us, in taking our imagery and feeding that to an AI reader, to that back end engine, and being able to diagnose and dissect these structures, these assets for companies, whether that's wind turbines, whether that's railroads for BNSF, whether that's utilities, cell towers, all of that, to be able to automate that process is a huge key in the computer science degree. This is something my boss has tasked me with, is partnering or going out and forming a strategic partnership with an AI company that can read our imagery. That's one thing we're lacking right now, unlike the likes of FLIR and Brett's world. That's one thing we have to get better at automating. And, you know, you look out into these different companies, I mean, they're sprouting up all over into different industries. And for us right now, there's a couple in the railway sector and in the utility sector. And so that computer science degree can go a long way for people. It's going to go a long way for this industry and for data processing. And so, you know, if you talk to people, service providers, UAV service providers throughout the country, one back or lagging thing in the company is that data processing time. It takes time, and you got deadlines to meet, and fairly often there's some hiccups that happen on that back end. And so these companies looking to hire those engineers of that sort is going to be a big point, you know, coming here soon with AI and artificial intelligence.
You touched on something which is pretty near and dear to the heart of most manufacturers and most economic developers across our state. It is surprisingly difficult right now to find people who have the skill sets to go to work in any industry. It was surprising to us as an organization trying to hire people recently that even in an environment of higher unemployment, we were challenged to find the folks that had the appropriate skill set that could work for us. And one of the challenges a lot of manufacturers see in high-tech fields are skilled degree workforce shortages. You talked briefly about the software engineers. Do you see that as a challenge with the drone manufacturing industry? What do we need to do to combat it? And how is it going to impact us if we cannot combat it quickly enough, competitively? Nick, I'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, I think like, for example, it's equipping these companies, these AI companies, and they're in the startup realm, and really being hand in hand, basically like my boss told me, to have an office with them and to be able to share and collaborate with what our imagery brings and what their software, what they need to see and read on the back end of that. Do I think there's a shortage? No, because there's some pretty talented companies out there that are looking for this talent and are coming up with these ideas and staying, ahead of the curve. And I think Brett made that point earlier. It's competitive out there, and staying afloat, and being in this industry now almost 5 years. You go to different conferences and expos and the ins and outs of different companies and who's staying afloat. It's a very competitive marketplace for this, and selecting that right one, because like I said, you have a client that comes in and they want AI on the back end of that. Well, we don't have that in our tool bag yet. So it is competitive. I think there's enough talent of a pool out there for it. I just think it's all about being us, the manufacturer, and taking stand on that and getting them what they need to help complete that full circle.
Brett, toss it to you. Workforce challenges. How is that going to be an issue with the drone industry as it continues to flourish, and what can we do to combat it?
So I completely agree with Nick that I don't think there's a shortage of talent out there for these types of developers, and STEM education is the obvious answer. Continuing to provide STEM education and make it better, frankly, for high schoolers, college students, but it's not so much about a shortage of the talent that you need to ultimately apply these automation techniques. It's repurposing them. And we're a great example of that. So we have a business that's called the ADAS business at FLIR. It's essentially a 360-degree thermal camera sensor suite that goes on driverless vehicles. Because the way that driverless vehicles, brake and do lane changes and everything that you need to do for automation is based on RGB cameras. So what are you going to do at night? What are you going to do in fog? And what are you going to do in adverse weather conditions? Glare, all things that thermal solves. And so, we have a business that we deploy a lot of software engineers towards developing classification algorithms for driverless vehicles, because that's a very, very near-term market. It's the automotive market. It's a big one. And so the talent exists. We have it internally. We build, and a good example of this, Kinnee, is basically building an algorithm to make sure that we can automate and 100% with 100% confidence identify stop signs, lights, people, animals, other cars, obstructions, things like that. It's really no different for the drone industry. It's just taking that knowledge set, that skill set that you're building for autonomous vehicles on the ground, and applying it to the air, and building the machine vision and the AI to automatically detect anomalies, whether that be an industrial inspection or a drone pilot in a local search and rescue team, that there's human classification algorithm in the camera that will automatically identify a human in the scene if you're doing a search and rescue scene. These are real life examples of technologies that are there, and they're going to continue to improve. I mean, for a very long time, military technologies would be, reduced down and deployed into the commercial industrial markets. We're starting to see a little bit of the opposite. You take a look at companies like Skydio that built a consumer drone known for automatic sense and avoid to make sure it doesn't hit anything. And they're part of now an Army program and working into the military. So it's really just always thinking about making things better, smarter, processing at the edge, anything you can do to streamline workflows and just make things easier. So that is a big piece of it. And, you know, at the macro level, Kinnee, we need to invest in STEM education and these types of curriculums for high school students and for, you know, PhDs and college students as well, is teaching them, like, you know, this is a potential use case. Let's go build an algorithm around it. And taking what is valuable to the end user and working backwards in the engineering cycle. So STEM education is really going to be the key to economic development and you know, continuing to produce the brightest minds in the world.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with that more. It is a big challenge across the United States to help students understand why they take a calculus class. But if they can see the end game of doing something as incredible as working in the UAS industry, I think that's a direct tie we need to make for them. So absolutely agree with you on that. You touched very briefly on military applications. We've been very fortunate here in Oklahoma to attract a company called FLIR, which builds a very long-range flight, a very large UAS. It was very interesting to me to meet the folks with FLIR and to see how they came through this process of realizing that this could be done and it needed to be done as a protective measure for the U.S. government. Are you seeing more of that, Brett, from your perspective of this longer range, larger UAS industry being more burgeoning, or is that kind of an anomaly?
It's a very good question. So drone technology in the military is a completely different use case, wildly expensive, not scalable necessarily. And we've seen the likes of large DoD primes like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and a lot of those manufacturers attempt to enter the commercial industrial market with airframes using their expertise that they already have in aerospace. And it's been really hard for them to get down to a consumer electronic type of business model that DJI has so, you know, swiftly perfected in the market as far as getting costs down and the type of features and usability that the commercial and industrial space have come to expect. So it's hard to say if they'll continue to try and do that. I don't think it will be a large undertaking from the likes of Boeing and Northrop Grumman and Lockheed and them down into the commercial space. I'm starting to see more of the other way of technology is innovating so quickly in the industrial space that we work in 6-month cycles in the drone space, and to just apply for a DoD bid, you're going to do 6 months of paperwork. So it's really something that we could probably spend a lot of time on because it's complicated. But I'm seeing more of a blending of the military UAS space and the commercial space. And really seeing that from the front lines, because FLIR, we acquired a company called Aerion Labs 2 years ago, which is a drone manufacturer. They have a couple different products. They're very robust, capable airframes as well as sensing capabilities. And that business is really being purposed towards the military because of the encryption and some of the features. And then we approach the drone space in a completely different way in the industrial technology segment. So that's why I say this is a complicated topic, because I see it on the front lines and it's complicated from there. And I continue to be amazed at the innovation out of the commercial industrial space, and whatever's best for the warfighter and what's going to work most efficiently is what they should deploy. And multiple branches in the DoD are starting to deploy commercial off-the-shelf systems on the battleground. So, and we've been a part of those programs. And so it's been exciting to see them be able to take a drone out of their backpack and throw it up in less than 30 seconds to help save, other soldiers. So it's a really great question. And I know that covered a lot of different bases, but I think rightfully so.
Thank you. That's good perspective on that. Nick, I'd love to get your take on that, the longer range, larger UAS for our military use.
I think for our business model, Karen, it's one of those we harp on, once this beyond visual line of sight, the BLOS comes into play for our cameras, it's going to be a massive, intake for us. And so we got to be compatible on that through the manufacturing side and making sure we're fluid there when that comes. To that point, for us, we are on the heavier side as far as the sensor goes. And so we need to combat with platforms that can carry up to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds, whatever it may be in our commercial space. And I think that, you look at what's going on right now, regarding the drone delivery asset, aside from that, I think for us, we look for those heavy lifters, heavy long flight durations, because if you talk to people, to Brett's point, DJI is everything. I don't care what company's out there. Somebody has flown a DJI before in their operations. It's registered through the FAA, and so they have mastered it, to Brett's point. And I think it's going to be an interesting in the manufacturing side the next 3 to 5 years. What all is going to entitle for DJI here in America. They're going to combat with different things. I read an article, I think it was today, where they've come out with some mode within their DJI Go app that they're not going to live the internet connection. They're not going to live stream that. So it's going to be interesting with what these American-made manufacturers can do and capitalize on. Really, they're giving them, this industry is giving them a chance here in America to go out and capture work.
And one more thing to add there, Kinnee, when it comes to larger payloads, because it's Part 107 doesn't cover aircraft above 55 pounds. Right now, the process to fly an aircraft above 55 pounds is difficult. It's a bit of a gray area. There is obviously the huge wave of UAM, of passenger carrying drones. There's going to need to be a lot of R&D. There's going to need to be a lot of testing. And validation of those systems. But again, another regulatory hurdle that we're going to have to get over to eventually be able to allow aircraft above 55 pounds to fly under Part 107 and carry large cargo. Because ultimately there are going to be capable aircraft that can fly at between 500 and 1,000 feet AGL that can carry 20, 30, 40 pound payloads, which is going to make things quicker, expedite last mile deliveries, all of the things to get people off the ground driving, because congestion is a big problem in a lot of cities. So regulatory hurdles will slow that down, but eventually when that changes, we'll see that happen.
We have a very significant area in Oklahoma that is focused on urban air mobility. One of our tribes, the Choctaw Nation, is focused on growing their community through urban air mobility, encouraging companies to move there because they can get their leadership to DFW in 30 minutes from a more rural area. So that is something that it is going to be an interesting track as to how they continue to move that forward, because they're really betting the game on that one. So there are quite a few companies that are engaged with them in this process. So I agree with you. It's going to be interesting to see how those larger payloads, and as you get those small people movers up in the air, it will be an interesting race to see who does well on that. We are coming close up on the end of our time, and I wanted to kind of circle back around to a little bit of what I initially kind of opened with, which is the state of manufacturing right now. We've gone through the 3 phases. We're into hopefully the 3rd, which is thrive. But respond, recover, and thrive. Respond was a frantic time, is the best way I know how to describe for a lot of manufacturers. Recover included a lot of time when they were both thoughtful and making some tough decisions, but also hopefully making some good decisions, planning for what their future is going to be. As we move solidly into what I truly hope is a thrive section in manufacturing, what advice would each of you give those manufacturers as they are entering this phase in the UAS industry and finding success in that thrive phase? And Brett, I'd like to start with you.
I think automation is the most important message. You know, I've been to some of these manufacturing plants in Shenzhen and Shanghai, and they're amazing. The size, the scale, the innovation, the Chinese drone industry has learned how to manufacture in capacities and volumes that we need to strive to get to. And the way that you do that is through automation. I think that obviously Tesla is doing that. A lot of car manufacturers have been moving towards automation, and that's what the drone industry needs is a lot of robotics and efficient automation in their facilities to be able to hit the types of volumes and maintain customer satisfaction to really make this drone industry what we know it will become over time. I think that that's the most important thing is we get drones into the hands of more people. That means we're going to have to ramp manufacturing. We're going to have much larger capacities. And I think that that is one of our biggest value propositions at FLIR is our manufacturing capabilities, as most of it is in the US. You know, we're a high-tech manufacturer. We rely on automation in a lot of ways. We can produce thousands of thermal cores a day across multiple facilities. And so that's what I hear a lot internally is let's continue to automate. Let's continue to have people be a part of the loop and a part of the workflow, just in a different way and not quite as hands-on. So that would be my suggestion and something that people that I look up to in the back of house at FLIR, what I see them doing on a daily basis is really preaching that.
That's very positive and definitely the route that we as a portion of the MAT would encourage any manufacturer to look at automation. Our take on it really is without automation, they won't survive.
I agree with you.
Industry 4.0 kicks into full gear.
Yeah.
Nick, your take on where we can give manufacturers advice as they enter the thrive stage of recovery from the pandemic.
I think a big thing for me that I've taken away when I first got in the industry, when I first met Brett, I worked for a UAV. We were a manufacturer. We made single rotor and multi-rotor aircraft, excuse me. And to have a product be ready out of the box, ready to rumble, ready to perform, goes a long way. And now working at phase one and making a top tier product and being able to have every hand that touches that, from submitting the order to getting that done out of the factory, checked, ready to rumble, is what I like to call that, and perform for duty, goes a long way for people, goes a long way for customers, and goes a long way for marketing efforts. And so to have a little turn that I called it in my career to not only, you know, selling a platform that wasn't ready to go out of the box, that wasn't checked, that wasn't, you know, all these people that work in these factories for us, I mean, you matter. And so I hope and people understand that, like, each person that gets their fingers on a product before it gets out into the world, you matter more than you think. And so for us to have a product that we have that can get out and fight right away it's truly magical.
Thank you for putting a very human face on manufacturing. We tend to forget the people that work in manufacturing facilities are the true gold that is there. Well, gentlemen, we are wrapping up on the end of our time, and I can honestly say I'm very honored to have you all both serve on this panel. It is a very positive take on where the manufacturing industry is headed, the opportunities that it's creating for our country, for our workforce, for our economy. It's very heartening to hear what you're saying. This is it's an exciting age. It's an exciting age to see what's coming out of the drone industry. And you're obviously in two companies that are leading edge on a lot of this. So I do want to thank you both for being a part of this today. This is exciting and again, makes us really understand the opportunity that there are for many economies across the United States in this industry. So any last quick words from each of you? Nick, I'll start with you.
No, Kinnee, I mean, thank you to you and Amanda for letting Phase One, myself, even play a role in this. Followed your UAS Tech Forum now for a couple years, so the growth has been tremendous, just like this industry has been. So for those of you that attended with Brett and I, thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know we all have our duties to attend to, so to hear a grain of salt of what we can provide from the UAV industry, we certainly appreciate it, and thank you all for taking, again, 50 minutes out of your day. Certainly appreciated.
Thank you. And Brett, thank you for coming to us live from your car. We appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the understanding from my beautiful car studio here. So I enjoy having these conversations, and I think it's important that we in the drone industry communicate as much as we can, especially with not being able to get together in person. It's important that we do these and continue to talk about how we move the industry forward, because I think the future is very exciting. And you know, anything that we can do as the manufacturer to help your region, your economic development, your industry, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much, and we appreciate all of our attendees today. Our contact information is available on the site, and if you have any questions or would like to speak to us directly about anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. Amanda, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity, and gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Take
Everybody
care.
stay safe. See you guys.
All right,
Bye-bye.
take care.